had to pick one thing to become a trend in women's health in 2026, it was definitely going to be this one. It is a major public health concern that does not receive the attention that it deserves. Did you know that about 1 in 3 women over the age of 50 are going to suffer from either a hip, a forearm, or a spine fracture in the remaining years of their lifetime? And the probability for men is about 3 times lower. This is because of the changes in our hormones that onset once we enter menopause and the drop in estrogen production. Our bone is not static, it is a dynamic living tissue that is always in a state of formation and also resorption. So it's constantly rebuilding itself and breaking down again. The decline in estrogen causes an imbalance in these two processes, and the bone resorption takes over, leading to a sharp decline in bone density that men do not experience to the same magnitude. This is why women are generally at a larger risk of developing osteoporosis later on in life. An injury at this age does not only mean partially losing your independence for a period of time, it could lead to complications, especially if you already suffer from some type of chronic condition such as cardiovascular disease. Luckily, there are a lot of things that you can do even now in your 20s if you're a part of the main demographic of the channel that help strengthen your bones and lower your risk of losing your independence later on in life. The two main pillars of bone health are nutrition and specific exercise that stimulates and strengthens your bone tissue. By the way, all of the resources that I'm using for the making of the video are linked down in the description box below if you want to check out something for yourself. Before I get into the specific nutrients, foods, and exercise, I want to make sure that you're familiar with our bone development timeline. Our childhood is a very critical time period for this. And if you were participating actively in any type of sport for that matter, you have much better odds of having higher peak bone density compared to your sedentary peers. In fact, one research paper followed children, both girls and boys, who were actively participating in sports activities throughout their childhood and teenage years, and the paper concluded that these had about 10% higher peak bone density compared to sedentary ones of the same age. This is where your bones are at their strongest they'll ever be, and it is somewhere between 25 and 30. There is no specific age for this. It is also partially genetically predetermined. The higher your peak bone density is, the lower the risk of osteoporosis later on in life. Once you reach this highest point, the bone density begins to slowly decline, and you need to put your best efforts into maintaining what you already have. It does not become a large concern until menopause hits if you're a woman, since, as I already explained, the estrogen is very tightly connected to our bone homeostasis. The exercise regimen largely depends on at what point you are in your lifetime, how mobile you are, especially if you're elderly, and what is your bone density once you start exercising. The probably most referenced type of physical activity I saw in the research papers was impact exercise. This term refers to any type of exercise that puts stress on your bones so that signals can be sent to your systems for your bones to be rebuilt stronger so that they can withstand the exercise the next time you perform it. The most strenuous type of impact exercise, but a very effective one, is rope jumping, skipping. So if you are a healthy young adult, this would be your best bet. For elderly individuals, really any type of weight-bearing exercise would be beneficial, since for some, due to their decreased mobility, already onset osteoporosis or other types of conditions, they simply cannot withstand such exercise intensity, and it would even be dangerous for them to perform it. Weight-bearing exercise refers to any type of exercise really that engages your legs and asks for them to be lifted, so kind of perform against gravity. And this is a very broad term. I know I explained it very vaguely, but this is pretty much what the definition was. This could refer to walking, to light jogging, also any type of bodyweight exercise that would involve lifting your legs from the ground. If you think about the wording of it, weight bearing just means being able to lift your own weight, so bodyweight movements. And since it's 2026 and people enjoy Pilates a lot, I want to mention that yoga and Pilates were also on the tier lists of exercises for bone density, but they were somewhere at the lower ranks, mostly because they do not put the same amount of stress on the bones, obviously, compared to the other types of exercises, and they would be more effective for improving stability and balance to prevent falling and not really to stimulate the bone formation. This is by no means less important, since in order for you to break something, you would have to fall probably in the first place. But it is important to mention that doing only Pilates or yoga is not going to cut it when we talk about improving our bone strength. To sum up, impact exercises and resistance training should be the main focus if one wants to stimulate the bone formation, but incorporating Pilates or yoga could definitely aid in the process to improve one's balance and coordination. For the elderly, a workout regimen is recommended of 3 to 4 times per week with 30 to 40 minute sessions. But for younger people, the numbers would be different, and here you can just refer to the official guidelines for physical activity. Now we're finally moving into the nutrition part of the video, which is by no means any less important. If you do not supply your body with the necessary nutrients, you wouldn't have the building blocks to build stronger bones. We're starting off with the most obvious one, which is calcium, since this is the primary component of our bones, the primary building block, and about 99% of our body's total storage of calcium is in the bones in the form of hydroxyapatite together with phosphorus. The first foods that come to mind when we talk about calcium are probably any dairy products, but they're not the only ones that contain good amounts of calcium. Specific types of seeds and nuts, specifically sesame seeds, also provide notable amounts of calcium. As already mentioned, phosphorus is the other structural component of the hydroxyapatite that's found in our bones, and our body stores about 85% of the total amount of phosphorus in our bones. Phosphorus is a bit more abundant than calcium, and it is found in a wide variety of foods. A lot of them are of animal origin, but there are also some plant sources not to be neglected. There is one thing that makes phosphorus intake a bit controversial, and that is too much phosphorus, excess phosphorus, can be detrimental to our bone health, since it stimulates the parathyroid hormone, which leads to an imbalance of bone resorption and bone formation. So too much would have the opposite effect that you were trying to achieve. Phosphorus found in our food is not likely to contribute to this happening, but a bigger concern are the food additives found in highly processed foods that contain inorganic phosphorus. This would refer to food additives such as preservatives to extend the shelf life, some emulsifiers to make things creamier, or some texturizers, things that help powders not clump together. All these types of things could have some type of inorganic phosphate additive in them, and you could simply check this out by reading the ingredients list. Or probably a more chill strategy to go about this would be to consume less highly processed foods in general, and then this issue would be solved. A fundamental thing to consider is that ensuring that you've ingested the right amounts of the building blocks is not simply going to cut it, especially when we're talking about calcium. Calcium is an element that is also pretty complicated to absorb and requires additional aid, especially in the form of vitamin D. Calcium is absorbed through two different pathways, and one of them is passive and one of them is active. The one that is active is regulated by a specific type of protein, which is released with the help of vitamin D. Vitamin D is, as I'm pretty sure you're familiar, mainly synthesized in our skin, and it's not present in a wide variety of food products, with some exceptions such as salmon and egg yolks. This is why in the winter, not necessarily vitamin D deficiency, but also just subclinical levels of vitamin D become very, very common. Without sufficient amounts of vitamin D, it doesn't really matter how much calcium we ingest, since it's not going to be absorbed into our system. On top of all of that, elderly people who have even higher needs of vitamin D and calcium are not able to synthesize as much vitamin D in the skin as younger people do, simply because they have less of the vitamin D precursor already present in the skin. So it doesn't matter how much sunlight they get, they simply won't produce the same amount a young adult would do. Considering that you have your vitamin D and your calcium in check, you also need to keep an eye out for one more element, and that is vitamin K2 specifically. Vitamin K is a fat-soluble vitamin which is present in the forms of K1 and K2. And K2 you might have seen in a combination with a vitamin D3 supplement. The reason behind this is that vitamin K2 is involved in the activation of osteocalcin, which tells the absorbed calcium in your system where to go. Osteocalcin makes sure that the calcium circulating in your system does not go to the arteries or someplace in your organs that it shouldn't go to. It is fundamental for redirecting calcium to the bone matrix where it should end up. Of course, there are plenty of food sources that contain vitamin K2, but if you believe that you are not consuming enough of them on a daily basis and you're supplementing vitamin D3 anyways, you might opt for a supplement that has both of those in one tablet. There are a lot of other minerals that research investigates in connection to bone density maintenance, but I don't think I could fit those into one video, so we're cutting it at these main ones here. Last but not least, there is another additive to your food that in excessive amounts could lead to your body getting rid of necessary calcium for your bones, and this one is salt. Excessive amounts of salts, especially consumed with highly processed foods in the amounts of above 5 grams per day of salts, increase the excretion of calcium from your system, so you're basically wasting any calcium that you had ingested that day. I figured I forgot to mention a key point about calcium absorption, and those are oxalates. Oxalates are found both naturally occurring in your body, but also in a wide variety of foods such as leafy greens like spinach, also nuts such as almonds or different types of legumes. The problem with oxalates is that they limit your calcium absorption by binding to it, and in excessively high amounts they can even form kidney stones. But unless you already suffer from kidney disease and you are not consuming multiple liters of green smoothies per day, this really shouldn't be a concern. However, this is the reason why calcium from plant sources could be a bit less absorbed in your body compared to the one found in dairy products, for example, since the oxalate content in those foods decreases the bioavailable amount of calcium in your body. What you can do is opt for leafy greens that are a bit lower in calcium compared to spinach. Other alternatives would be kale, for instance, and the same goes for nuts. Cashews, for example, would be lower in oxalates compared to almonds, so you see how you can tweak your foods here and there to lower the overall oxalate intake. Our body is a pretty complicated system, and everything is so intertwined that you need to watch out for multiple different things when considering a specific health condition. However, if you're eating a balanced diet and not overdoing ultra processed foods and at the same time participating in some type of exercise, I'm pretty sure you can see how most of these things right here would already be covered naturally. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope that you enjoyed the contents of the video. Let me know if you did, and if you have a topic you would like me to discuss next time. Don't forget to check out my socials. I try to post on them right now more frequently, and we're gonna see how that's gonna go. Hopefully I stick to it. I prefer long form content, to be honest, but I know that I should put myself out there on other platforms as well. Thank you again for being here with me today, and I will see you in the next one.